notorious when it comes to its concentration of gangs and gang violence, especially in the immigrant district, which is where she lived and taught. It was a pretty average night if you heard between 1-10 gunshots. My mom, being the freaking boss that she is, refused to leave the district or teach anywhere else. Anyways, her first year teaching there she had a group of 5 boys, all of them living in destitute poverty. During break, they loved to draw pictures of cars like Lamborghinis and Porsches, all things that they could never afford. They all promised my mom that if they ever got a car, she would be the first person that they would take for a ride. Skipping ahead about 8 years, my mom was leaving the school late after staying to grade some tests. As she was walking to her car, she saw a shady group of boys leaning against a car watching her. She began to walk fast, but they boys got up and began walking towards her. All of them were wearing the telltale blue bandanas, Crips, and my mom said she could see one who was packing a Saturday night special. Anyways, just as she got to her car door, the group of boys reached her. One of them spoke in deep, intimidating voice, "Missus, we're here to take you for a ride." My mom thought she was being kidnapped and reached for her pepper spray. Then another of the group stepped forward and introduced themselves as the 5 boys that she taught about 8 years ago. They squeezed my mom into the backseat of her old, beat-up Cadillac between 2 of the students. They took her to a really fancy restaurant somewhere and paid for her meal in full. Later they took her back to her car, dropped her off, and told her if she ever needed anything to call them, then drove off. TLDR. My mom went out to some fine dining with some Crip members. Apparently your mom is down with the Crips. That's basically the definition of street cred. Not the Hex Angels, but another motorcycle club that my uncle was a member of showed up with hundreds of people after he was killed in an accident, hit by a drunk driver while on his bike. The funeral home was about 5 miles from the cemetery, and I am pretty sure that's how long the procession was. I never had a bad experience with the Angels. After they took over the local red light district, it became a much better place to party. They throw out those who won't behave. They made sure no one is selling bad drugs. Their bouncers are very respectful. Drinks got cheaper, and rumor has it the prostitutes got better. This is something rarely pointed out. They make crime clean. They don't want extra attention from bad drugs or buttholes causing violence. Turn it into a sort of Amsterdam. Well, this isn't a gang, but certainly a story about a bad butt thug. Where I went to school was pretty middle class white. However, there was one part of town that was kind of rough, as it butted up against the rougher town right next to us. There was a kid that went to my school that was a senior when I was a sophomore. He was honestly probably the biggest bad butt in my school. He was about 6'2", 240 pounds. He was all muscle, and in high school he already had a body filled up with prison-style tattoos. I know he had spent some time in juvie. One day from a distance I saw some other typical white thug kids kind of taunting a kid with obvious mental handicap issues. I couldn't quite tell what was going on though. A few seconds later I see the actual only bad butt I went to HS with come over and grab one of the guys. I hear him tell the kid to go pick up his freaking cars. The kids kind of scramble, and I see they are picking up Hot Wheels all over the locker bay. He then makes the kids apologize to the handicapped kid. They had been kicking his Hot Wheels around the locker bay while he tried to play with them. The mean kids leave, and I see the bad butt guy start talking to the kid about Hot Wheel cars. The rest of the school year the bad butt kid would bring Hot Wheels, and for the handicapped kid, they would trade Hot Wheels, talk about Hot Wheels, buy each other Hot Wheels, and even play with the Hot Wheels on the lunch tables. He spent so much time hanging out with this kid and his Hot Wheels. It was one of the most bad butt things I have ever seen. This somehow restored my faith in humanity. In Stockholm, Sweden in 2007, a task force of highly trained officers from the Swedish military police was tasked with hunting down and incarcerating any and all known members of the Werewolf Legion, a gang responsible for most of the sea and cannabis trafficking in Sweden and Finland. My cousin Andres was an affiliate of theirs at the time. operating a rather large marijuana grow-op in Berlin, Germany. Within a span of 8 months, 16 known affiliates to the WL were imprisoned in Sweden on charges of drug trafficking, extortion, or murder, including Andres' stepbrother, Johan. Johan was being transported to a holding facility in Halmstad, and on the way the police caravan was attacked by gang associates, believed to be part of the Ukrainian mafia. 3 officers were killed in the attack, and 1 was shot in the throat. Instead of running while he had the chance, Johan ripped off his shirt and applied pressure to the wound on the officer's neck with it. He waited with the officer, bleeding profusely from his throat, until the paramedics and police arrived. He was later pardoned of his crimes, which were listed as 2 counts of trafficking, as well as an outstanding warrant for an assault 2 years prior in a bar in Oslo, Norway. TLDR. My cousin's stepbrother, a gang affiliate in Sweden, saved an police officer's life instead of escaping. Man, this is my favorite. Sometimes it really pays to scroll to the bottom of a long thread. Once around noon I was hanging out at a scatter shop when a blood just walked in and started complaining about how all the clothes are blue and how there wasn't enough red. The guy working, who's super cool, just said they would restock and he left. Later that day towards 9 PM my friend, 15, and I, 14, were at our local scatter park. It can get sketchy when a cop rolled by the nearby basketball court. Afraid of whatever a cop might find on them, everyone flooded out and into the scatter park. My friend didn't see any of this happening and checked a text on his new iPhone. All of a sudden 3 guys in their early 20s asked him to let them see his phone to call someone. Take it and run. When he said no, they started to corner him and throw punches. All of a sudden the same blood from the scatter shop that was smoking a joint on a nearby bench ran and calling them all pussies for jumping a kid and promptly beat the crap out of them. After they all ran away, he kindly gave my friend $5 for his troubles. TLDR. Nice, but blood helped my friend from getting robbed and gave him $5. Partially relevant. There's a flooded quarry about 30 minutes from my house, and around it is a campground that the bikers own. The cops don't frick with the bikers at all, so they just let us chill on their property, drink as much as we want, blaze as much as we want, and swim all for only $5 a day. It is very kind of them. D. Fun fact, you're probably swimming in a quarry with a bunch of bodies in it. I was at a gas station one day and pulled up to the pump. Got out and realized that I wasn't close enough to the pump. New car. So I got in, pulled up farther, got out and locked my door, leaving the car on, keys in the ignition, and my then 6-month-old baby in the car. She thought it was hilarious. I called my insurance company. I have roadside assistance through them and they were planning on taking 2 hours. I called the cops, who said they could not help me. Then this guy walks up, sees me in near hysteria, and says he will call his friend to come down with a Slim Jim. It occurred to me as he called his subordinate and commanded him to arrive within the next 2 minutes that this dude was some serious kind of gang member with significant rank. I ignored their need for a Slim Jim as they broke into my car, freeing my still content child and allowing me to make it to work on time. TLDR. I have AAA now. I especially like the TLDR on this one. Oh, another one. I was 19 and stranded in North Miami. I had just locked my keys in my car in a rather unpopulated and shady area. I was a blonde, blue-eyed, extremely white girl, and being as I had not intended to stop in North Miami to begin with, I was just wearing a bikini top and a miniskirt. There was a gang of Hispanic youth in the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse across the street from me, just watching me. This was long before cell phones and such. I took a chance and just put on my most confident face and walked over to them and asked if anyone knew how to break into a car and could they help me. They all looked at each other for a second. You could tell they were thinking over all the possibilities. Then one of them shook his head and just walked over to my car and popped my lock with his pocket knife and a piece of wire he found on the ground. Had a similar experience when I was in high school. A news crew was visiting the school and they locked their keys in the van. They ended up asking a couple of the kids who looked like they could have been gang members. They were, if they could get it open, and they did. My uncle told me this story many years ago. He was living in a place beside some Hells Angels. My uncle is a big guy and rides bikes too, but back then he was riding, I believe, A Honda bike. Cruiser type, not a crotch rocket. Anyways, he said the HA guys would come help him fix his bike if they saw him working on it. My uncle loves tinkering with his toys. I guess they would bust his chops a bit for not driving American made, but they were just nice people and enjoyed helping working on bikes. He also said they had really good peanuts and would give him bags full of them all the time. I never understood that last part, but I guess they were in the peanut business. For laundering purposes maybe. He still says they are the best neighbors he ever has had. Respectful, friendly and kind. It should be noted that this is all happened in Canada. Peanuts is another word for H. Your uncle did H. Joking. My biological father was a bandito and was kindly enough to bang my mom so that I could be given the gift of life. Heart of gold, that one. My husband and I tow our camper from Florida to Tennessee twice a year to camp in the Smokies. A good stopping point is an area called Locust Grove, GA. There's a cute overnight RV park close on I-75 and also the most kick-butt Mexican restaurant you'd never guess was in a strip mall where we like to grab a bite and a drink. One night we got in a little late and were finishing up dinner and watching the debut of Favre playing for the Jets on TV at the Mexican place. The game went to the half, and the restaurant was closing up. We asked the waiter if he knew of any place we could catch the second half, and he pointed us to some bar across the interstate. Off we go to a little nondescript place named The Grove, seated in front of your typical interstate motel. There were just a handful of cars in the lot, but it still looked open, so we headed in. The waiter was right. They were showing the game on a big TV, so we grabbed some stools and ordered some beers. I get kind of loud watching football, especially if I've had a few, so I'll let out a few hoots and hollers, and the waitress heads over to see if we want another round. I feel dumb at this point, because I'm in a strange bar with locals being sort of loud, so I apologized to the waitress. She replied in the heaviest, sweetest Georgia drawl, "Baby, you're in a biker bar, you be as noisy as you want," and then went off to get our beers. That's when we took a good look around, and our dumbasses realize we are in a real life biker bar. Like, hardcore. We notice a poker game in the back room. We see the biker flags hanging. We see the bikers at the bar in the shadows. Biker, bar, big time, but also good football game, cold beers, and what feels to be a fairly non-threatening, laid-back environment. So, we stay late, really late, and get to know Kat the bartender, and others seated at the bar, who are all super nice. We got invited back anytime during our travels. In fact, we learned many truckers stay in the parking lot of the Grove because it's convenient and they serve food. Kat told us we could park our rig there anytime, which killed us. Our camper was now a rig and to just call ahead and she'd have a hot meal waiting. She also said it's safer than the RV park, because it's a biker bar, and no one will let you get fricked with if you're our guest. So, we now hit the Grove every time we pass through on I-75 if we can. We learned in later visits that the gang whose bar that is are the Outlaws. They seem very nice. In fact, the last time we were there they were hosting a charity event. A chili cook-off, I think, for kids. TLDR. Suburban couple stops in a bar on the way to go camping to see a football game. Finds out it's a very friendly biker bar belonging to the Outlaws. Goes back twice a year to say hello and have beers. Personally, I hate seeing motorcycle clubs described as gangs. There are many different clubs, lots of different missions and ethics. Honestly though, besides that they are doing it to get brownie points to do their bad things mentality, there are lots of people that have been affected in a positive way by clubs. I was in one, full patched member, for over a year. No, it was not the Outlaws as my username alludes. That's only a playful take on an old nickname of mine. The club I rode with was a national club and was territorial. I can say from experience we put a lot of work into Christmas toy drives, food pantries and real church contributions. Local church helped as a homeless shelter and drug rehab with counseling. I can tell you that not the biggest meanest dude in that club didn't have a tear in their eye watching a 5-year-old boy or girl open a gift they would have never gotten from their parents. Nor did they miss seeing their eyes light up when the doors to the clubhouse were opened and there was a full Thanksgiving meal on spread. The first of many for a lot of those kids. Aside from the gang-related activities, club folks are human. They have hearts, some bigger than others, but they are there. I live right next to a Hex Angel's house kinda thing. It's like their clubhouse anyways. I've always really liked motorcycles, and when I was little asked my grandpa if I could go see theirs. So we walk over there and I asked this big brute of a man if I could see the Harleys, and without skipping a beat, he hoists me up, sits me in front of him, puts the key in the ignition, and start going in circles through the parking lot. I was having a grand old time. And I still visit there to say hi to the guys every month or so. They let me have a shot of Jack sometimes: 3. My mother-in-law was the lead nurse on the orthopedics ward. Every biker in town knew her, and she would stand up to any of them. If they complained, she'd shame them by comparing them to other gangs. She used visiting privileges as a hammer to enforce strict neutrality and a no colors policy. They respected her so much. One day she's driving to work and blows a tire. Total failure. Shredded. Who should pull up to help her but the Sons of Satan? As hardcore a badass outlaw gang as any in the country. They not only put on her spare, they escorted her to work, then repaired her bad tire and put it back on the car. She said being surrounded by dozens of bikers on the freeway acting as an escort was the loudest, but most comforting feeling ever. She sounds like a pretty badass woman. Kudos to her. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. What cool thing did you accidentally do that made people think you're a bad butt? My first week of uni, I broke my nose and reset it in front of a crowd of people. I was heading one way, a heavy fire door was heading the other, and my nose was the casualty. My nose ended up sideways across my face, and I panicked and just pushed it back. Didn't mean to reset it, I just wanted my nose back where it was. Did that once when I was 17 and drunk. Now when I exhale, one nostril has just a wisp of air. As a wee lad of like 10 years, I was playing with a few friends in our attic when one of them spotted a huge scorpion on the wall. We do have them here commonly, but not in that size. Anyway, I panicked hard as frick and threw the first thing I could grab at it, which happened to be a knife I held we used to carve wooden arrows for our bows with. Through a neat combination of good angle and I suppose luck, I hit it spot on and nailed it to the wall, ensuring its slow untimely demise. I was known as the Monster Hunter for half a year after this, and I wallowed in the glory as much as I could. In an old Spider-Man game for PlayStation 2, my save glitched and it was at 100% completion the next day. I told my brother and dad, who had their own saves, that I beat it overnight. In Hamley's toy shop in London, they have a Nerf firing range in the basement. The staff just hand Nerf guns to anyone walking past. So I was there with my daughter, and a guy hands me a 6-shot Nerf gun. I proceed to put all 6 darts through the bullseye in about 10 seconds. Hand the gun back to him and walk away without a word. A complete fluke, but the look on his face was priceless. Think you left out the part where you were a member of MI6. I did a front flip on a snowboard in Snow Summit Ski Resort. I got a few people who I heard clap for what they have just witnessed. Little did they know that it was my first time boarding, or anything snow related. I actually didn't know how to stop, so I picked up speed and tripped forward, made some kind of front flip and ended up on my feet continuing down the slope like I freaking did it on purpose. We all had to wait in the gym for our bus, so I was playing basketball with a douche a grade above me, and about a foot taller than me. He kept fouling me, and I was getting pee. So, he did it one more time, and I decked him in the jaw and lost my footing like a clumsy jackass. Somehow, the physics of my punch were just right to make it look like I decked him, ducked down to dodge his slow-ass haymaker, spun around on my heel while ducked down, and popped back up on both feet. The guy thought I did some crazy kung fu crap, put his hands up and walked away. I was still wondering what the frick happened, because I thought I looked like a walrus on roller skates, and had embarrassed myself, until my friend of mine asked how I learned how to do that. When violence is so justified that the universe itself decided to help you out. Went to the shooting range for the first time with my now husband and didn't know a thing I was doing. Trying to make a joke, I turned around and said, "Ha, You're gonna be so impressed. Shot the first shot and managed to hit the nail that was holding up the target. His mouth dropped. My mouth dropped. The two guys on either side of us were like, dang. You got that right on the nail. He thought I was such a bad butt. And now I wash his clothes and make him food. Back in the mid-90s when I smoked, I was sitting on the floor going through CDs at a party, and I yelled to my friend to throw me a cigarette. He says my name. I turn around and the cigarette is hurling toward me and it lands right in my mouth filter end first. I just gave him an appreciative nod like we do this all the time. You still get mad props for this. A guy owed me money. A lot of people knew it. One night a pickup truck with 4 guys rolled up on him in a dark alley and they proceeded to beat the living crap out of him with blackjacks. I had nothing to do with it, but people started treating me like Don Corleone after that. I once raised my hand in class, at the front of the room to answer a question, and caught a pen that someone tried throwing to their friend from the back of the room. Totally played it off like I meant it. I once raised my hand in class, at the front of the room to answer a question. That's pretty badass itself. When I was in 7th grade, I was attacked by a senior from the football team. I put my hands up to defend myself and he happened to break his arm when he hit my elbow. He was a bully and I became sort of popular for breaking a senior jock's arm. I never fought again through high school because I was always the 7th grader that took out the big scary senior. I knocked out a guy that had been threatening my friends and I. However, in reality I fell on him and he knocked his head against a step. Whatever works, I suppose. During middle school the school bully and his friends used bicycles as objects of terror. They'd ride up on random students and basically kick slap punch drive-by style on students walking home. One day I overheard them talking about getting me after school. One thing I learned from medieval Total War I was that spearman, cavalry. Later that day I found a really big stick and was using it as a walking home stick. The kid and his goons were riding up on me and just as he was about to punch me I jammed my stick into the front wheel of his bike, bent the spokes, and sent him flying. He landed a good 10 away, busted his mouth, and face up pretty good. He tried to attack me and I ended up beating him down with said stick. His friends didn't intervene. They thought it was pretty awesome and they ended up telling everyone that I knew ninjutsu and whatnot. That followed me for the rest of middle school and high school. I never had to deal with bullying again. Not accidental. OP is a legitimate badass. My friends and I have this pool place we frequent and, while I'm no expert, I tend to do fairly well on average. So one of these days, we had decided to invite some of our classmate girls out with us. We were a really tight class where everyone was close friends, but the girls weren't really into pool much so we usually didn't ask. And so began the night of playing pool. Now one of the girls we had invited, I had a crush on so my best friend, being my best friend, put extra pressure on me to do well with some minor nudges whenever it was my turn. However, since I'm a klutz, instead of hitting the white ball in the center, I ended up tossing it in the air over the ball I was aiming for. Somehow, this led to the white ball hitting 2 of the balls of my suit which ended up going in. My best friend lost his crap cause he thought I did it on purpose, while I just stood there confused at what I had done. At recess in elementary school, our dodgeball was a circle in the middle of the blacktop. The throwers would be on the outside of the ring while the dodgers would be on the inside. I was the last dodger. I knew I was fricked. So I turned to walk out of the circle as the ball came flying at me. I figured if it hit my back, no big deal, right? Well, I somehow caught the ball in between my legs as I was turning them. By doing so, another one of the eliminated dodgers got to come in. He was good. So as he caught the balls, more people came in, and it was like we had this big comeback all thanks to me. I'm sure I'm literally the only person that remembers it, but at the time people thought I was awesome. That reminds me of a game of dodgeball in year 10. I, short weedy kid, was alone in my side, against the star of the school's basketball team. All the balls were on his side of the hall, and he missed me with 2. Then the third came whizzing at me and I majestically jumped to avoid it. I ended up landing on the ball and breaking my nose. I had just finished playing golf and had my bag on my back. While taking my phone out of my pocket I lost it and watched as it precipitously caromed towards the sidewalk. Fearing the impending cracked screen and loss of quick red-lighting, I did what any rational being would do in that situation. Bent over to grab it as quickly as I could. As I bent over, though, the weight of my golf bag propelled my torso forward, causing me to do an unintentional front ninja roll, the phone now out of sight and reach. As I recovered from the roll onto my feet, impressive in and of itself being that no clubs left the golf bag, I began to frantically look for my phone to see the wanton destruction caused by me being too lazy to purchase a case and the sidewalk being too lazy to give a crap about my screen's condition. Not being able to locate the phone on the ground, I opened my hands, arms outstretched, in frustration, and that's when the phone landed in my outstretched hand. Apparently when I went into accidental ninja mode and did the front roll I took a step forward, and when my trailing foot left the earth to participate in the roll it kicked my phone up in the air on the perfect arc to land in my hand a second or two later. Onlookers were mystified and or slightly aroused because it looked like I was just being a badass. Then a few weeks later I dropped the phone in a toilet. That ending made me snort really loud.